Yeah, welcome viewers for this edition of our online lesson. And today's topic is human body of standard 5. To take you through is Mr. Opio Karibu. So in class 5, our first topic is the breathing system. Some may like to call it respiratory system. There is no problem. And our objectives are, by the end of our lesson, you should be able to identify main parts of the breathing system. Part B, state the functions of the parts of the breathing system. Welcome. So, breathing in is called inhaling or inspiration. Breathing out is called exhaling or expiration. We usually take in all the gases in air, but our body system uses mainly oxygen. We take in all gases, but our body system uses oxygen. Then we breathe out the other gases which we don't need. So we first start with the diagram to show you how the system looks like. Because once you know how the system looks like, you'll be able to know how it functions. So this is our breathing system. As you can see, it's very clear. We have the top part called nasal cavity. Cavity is just a space. So this is the part which has the nose. You can see it. Then from the nose, air enters downstream to the first pipe that we call trachea. From the trachea, it branches into two. The trachea branches into two parts. The first part is called bronchi. When there are two, and if it is one, you can refer to it as bronchus. So if there are two, we refer to them as bronchi, but when it is one, we call it bronchus. From there, the air moves to other small branches, and the small branches we are talking about here are bronchioles. Bronchioles are the small branches, that is, from the bronchus, we have other fine or small branches that we refer to as bronchioles. Then from the bronchioles, the air enters into some spaces that we call alveoli, or air sac if you wish. You can call them air sac or alveoli. We also have diaphragm here. The diaphragm is a sheet of muscle. It's just a muscle that usually moves up and down. When you breathe in, air enters through this section. When you breathe in, air enters through your nose, this part, and it moves down to the trachea. Above the trachea, we have the pharynx. Pharynx is what we can also call throat. So it is the one which receives sometimes air from the nose and also food from the mouth when we are doing digestion. If I was to draw a bigger one, we have the pharynx here, which breaks into two. The first part leads to what we call trachea. Trachea is also called windpipe. That's where air enters. From the pharynx also, we have another pipe that we call food pipe or esophagus or gullet. For today, we are going to take this branch of windpipe. So from the throat, we have the trachea, and just above the trachea, we have what we call larynx. And larynx is what we call a voice box. Its work is to produce sound. So most of the time when you produce sound, it is from the voice box, what we call larynx. So for now, we are going to look at the branch from trachea, not from the food pipe. So I've said air enters into our nose, and the nose has several functions. First of all, in the nose, the air is cleaned. If you breathe in dusty air, for example, the dust particles are trapped by mucus and hair. The nose has mucus and hair that traps dust particles or any other foreign material that you may have inhaled. From there, the air enters into our trachea. I've said the nose first cleans. Apart from cleaning, it can also warm air. Cold air is not good. Some people may be affected when you breathe in cold air. That's why it's recommended that you keep yourself warm. So the nose warms air, it cleans air, it also moistens air. Cleaning the air, it uses what we call mucus and some hair inside the nose. The mucus and hair can also be found in the trachea doing the same function, cleaning air or removing dust particles from it. And that's why sometimes you remove sputum from your mouth, something like mucus from your mouth, because the trachea also has some mucus and hair for cleaning the air that you breathe in. From the trachea, the air moves into what we call bronchus. If there is one, that branch is called bronchus. When there are several or when there are two, we call them bronchi, as you can see here. So the air is led to the bronchi. From the bronchi, it still branches into smaller parts that we refer to as bronchioles. It's here. And then the ending of those bronchioles are where we now find what we call alveoli, or you can also refer to them as air sac. That's where gases are exchanged. The carbon dioxide from your body system is brought by blood to your alveoli. The oxygen that you breathed in, you inhaled, also goes to your alveoli. And then the exchange takes place there. The oxygen is absorbed by your bloodstream and carbon dioxide is removed from your bloodstream. Then we breathe out carbon dioxide. Then we breathe in oxygen, and the same process repeats itself. Now we have the diaphragm, which mainly controls the breathing. When you breathe in, remember, if something is like this and you are breathing in, is like putting something down like that. If you look at my arrow here, it will press this diaphragm. So when you breathe in, the diaphragm usually moves down. And it doesn't move down to curve downwards, otherwise it will remove all your intestines. It usually moves down to flatten. So once it is flat, it means you have breathed in. If it moves up to become dome-shaped, like the one you can see in our diagram, then air is usually pushed out. If something is flat like this, then you move it to bend like this, it will push things outside. So when we are breathing out, the diaphragm curves upwards. You can say it forms what we call a dome-shaped. So that is the process of breathing. There are other things which occur when you breathe in. For example, remember, it's like pumping air in a football. The football swells. Likewise, when you breathe in, you swell. You have seen sometimes people want to look big, they inhale a lot of air, then they look very big like bouncers. But the moment they breathe out, they look very tiny. So when you breathe in, the following occurs. One, the alveoli or the lungs get inflated. Inflated means they get filled with air. Number two, your ribs move outwards. Because I've said it's like pumping air in football, it swells. For your chest to swell, your rib must move outwards. Then your shoulder, this part of the shoulder moves up. In other words, when you're pumping air in football, it moves outwards, it moves up, and the bottom part moves down. But I've said that bottom part called diaphragm, that sheet of muscle, usually moves down not to curve down, but to flatten. So these are what takes place when you breathe in. Number one, air enters your lungs. Your lungs get inflated. Number two, your ribs move outwards. And this part, the shoulder part, moves upward. So when you breathe in, air gets inflated, ribs move outwards and upwards. And diaphragm moves downwards to flatten, not to curve down. When you breathe out, it's like you contract or you shrink. So your rib moves inwards, your diaphragm moves upwards to become dome-shaped, and your ribs also move downwards. So inwards, downwards, and the bottom part diaphragm moves upward. And I've said the gases that are exchanged are carbon dioxide and oxygen. And this gaseous exchange occurs in the alveoli, not in the nose. The gases are exchanged in the alveoli. Nose is just a passage. Others usually say mammals breathe through lungs, not through nose. So when gases enter into your alveoli, that's when oxygen is absorbed into your bloodstream and carbon dioxide is removed. Now, just to quick summary, we have said, a quick summary, I've said parts of the breathing system, we have the nose. And the nose is responsible for cleaning air, warming air, and moistening air. It has mucus and hair for cleaning air, e.g. removing dust particles from the air that you have breathed in. Then the first branch after the nose, we have the trachea. I'll pick it from trachea. The top part of trachea is what we call larynx, the voice box. It also prevents food because, again, on top of it, we have epiglottis that prevents food from entering your trachea by mistake. When food enters there, you feel like breathing out because it chokes you. And when it chokes you, you feel like not breathing out, but coughing it out. So from the trachea, we have the branches. One, we have this first branch called bronchus. Then the bronchus also subdivides into bronchioles. The bronchioles lead to alveoli or air sac. They are found in flesh here called lungs. And the lung on your right-hand side is called the left lung. In science diagram, things which are on your right side are referred to as left, be it heart, be it kidney, those ones will do them later, be it lungs, etc. So this is this person's left lung. It's on your right-hand side, but it's the left side of the person whose lungs you are drawing. So we have next. So from there we have functions of different parts. As summary, I've already mentioned it. These are the summary for those who are taking short notes. We have the nose, which I've said has hair and mucus. Its work is to clean air, to trap dust using the hair and mucus, also to moisten air that we're breathing in so that we don't take in very cold air, and then to warm air, the other function. We also have trachea, which I've said is called windpipe because air passes there. The passage of air occurs in it, trachea. From the trachea, air passes to the bronchus. So it also has some mucus and hair to trap dust and to clean air. We've also said bronchus has two branches. That is the right and the left. And it allows passage of air to the bronchioles. The bronchioles are the ones which are found inside the lungs. They branch into several small branches. And in them, we find at their end things we call air sac or alveoli, where gases are exchanged. Then I have lungs. There are two in number, the left lung and the right lung. They have air sac, where gases are exchanged. The air sac, we've said, is also known as alveoli. It allows exchange of gases, the carbon dioxide and oxygen. You take in oxygen and remove carbon dioxide. And I've said breathing in is called inspiration or inhaling. Breathing out is called expiration or exhaling. Then diaphragm, I've said, controls breathing. When the diaphragm moves up, you breathe, it pushes air out from your lungs and you breathe out. When it moves down, it sucks in air because it creates a space in your thorax. This empty space, like a vacuum, usually sucks things. Also, the diaphragm, when it moves down, it sucks in air from your nose and the air enters into your lungs. The process of breathing, I've already said, breathing in is called inspiration or inhaling. Diaphragm moves down, lungs get inflated, and the ribs move up and outwards. To summarize also, the process of breathing out, we said, is called exhaling or expiration. The diaphragm moves up to become dome shape. Lungs get deflated. Opposite of inflated is deflated. And the ribs move inwards and downwards. So that marks the end of that part. The topic comes under human body. In study 5, you did 2 topics of human body. One of them was this breathing system. Then the other one was digestive system, which will be our next program. So digestion means breaking down of food into particles that can be absorbed by your bloodstream. That's the meaning of digestion. Without digestion, we'll be eating like maize na inaingia in our blood vile iko tu ikiwa maize or omena or fish or skuma. Digestion helps to break that food particles into tiny pieces that can be absorbed by your bloodstream and then transported all over your body where they are needed. In your muscle, for example, so that you get energy. So today we're going to look at how the system works, and our objectives of today, the objectives are clearly written on the board. You'll have to, by the end of our lesson, identify the main parts of a digestive system, then state the functions of the various parts of the system. So it will not be a very long lesson, but it's very important. You cannot miss it in KCPE. So I've already said digestion is breaking down of food into small particles or pieces that can be absorbed by your bloodstream. We have 2 types of digestion, mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion involves the teeth. Food must first be broken down by your teeth into smaller pieces that you can swallow easily. In this lesson, we are mainly going to dwell on chemical digestion, the ones which require chemicals to break them down. So in the mouth, several activities occur. First, mechanical digestion, where the teeth crushes food into small pieces. Also, your mouth has saliva, which has chemicals that further break the food. These chemicals in science are referred to as, the chemicals are referred to as enzymes. The chemicals found in some fluid that break down food are called enzymes. And they are found in what we call digestive juices. Digestive juices in the mouth is saliva, which has enzymes. Later on in secondary, you learn that the enzyme, one of them is ptyalin. But for now, I'm not supposed to mention the name, but just for the sake of those who are curious. Stomach also has digestive juices. In the stomach, we find gastric juice, which has enzyme in it. For those who want to learn more, later on you'll learn about renin and pepsin, being the enzymes. Then in the small intestine, we have intestinal juice, which also has enzyme in them. Other juices for digestion are pancreatic juice from the pancreas, which also helps to finish digestion. So I've said we have 2 types of digestion, mechanical digestion and chemical digestion. For today's lesson, we are dwelling on chemical digestion with enzyme, which starts in the mouth. In the mouth, we have a digestive juice called saliva. And saliva, apart from having enzymes or chemicals that help in digestion, the saliva also does other things. Number 1, saliva usually makes the food to be slippery. In other words, so that the food can glide as you are swallowing. Remember what happens when you eat bread, dry bread, without tea, blue band, etc. Sometimes it feels like it is stuck somewhere in your throat. So the digestive system here, the saliva, one work is to reduce friction, to make the food slippery so that it can slide down your throat. The other function of saliva is to stick the food particles together. If you take a hammer and you hit biscuit, it will be in fine particles or powder. But now if it is mixed with saliva, you'll find it can even be modeled. So saliva sticks the food particles together so that you swallow them as one round thing that we refer to as a bolus. So from the mouth, food goes to what we call oesophagus. Oesophagus, like that. Oesophagus is also called food pipe. It's also called food pipe, not windpipe. They also call it gullet if you want other names. Remember, the continuous pipe from the mouth to anus down here is referred to as alimentary canal or gut. Alimentary canal is spelled this way. Alimentary, and then canal, you know how to spell it. We also call it gut, the continuous tube from mouth down there. And that's the path followed by food when we're doing digestion. So we are here. The food is in the food pipe in form of what we call a round thing called bolus. The bolus are usually pressed by wave-like motions that we refer to as peristalsis. Peristalsis are forces that when you look at it, they look like waves like this. So they press food to go down. Otherwise, you will not be able to swallow when you are horizontal, when you are lying down, because food will stop where it is. So it's not gravity which pushes the food to your stomach, but it's a force, wave-like motions called peristalsis. Food goes to your stomach where it stays for around 3 hours. That mixes with digestive juices from the gastric juice, which has enzymes. Foods like proteins are usually digested there. Protein foods are those like from animal products and legumes, the ones which come in pods, like beans, peas, green gram, and animal product like meat, chicken, eggs, milk, etc. They are digested in the stomach. In the mouth, it's carbohydrates. They're cereals like maize, rice, wheat, millet, and things made with them like ugali, porridge, Weetabix, spaghetti, etc. Now the food is in the stomach. It is being digested. From the stomach, food moves to the ileum. Ileum is a small intestine. The very top part of ileum is called duodenum. And at the duodenum, the very first part of the small intestine, somewhere there, is referred to as duodenum. At the duodenum, fats are digested into tiny droplets. Fats and oils are digested at the duodenum using a juice called bile juice. Bile is usually produced or secreted by the liver. It passes through a small tube called bile duct and is stored in what we call gallbladder. So bile is stored in gallbladder. It's produced by the liver and it is used in the duodenum. Those can be 3 questions in your examination. Where is bile produced? Liver. Where is it stored? Gallbladder. Where is it used? Duodenum. To do what? To digest fats. 4 questions in 1 sentence. So bile produced in the liver, passes through bile duct, stored in the gallbladder, used in the duodenum to digest fats. Carbohydrates, we say digestion is in the mouth. Proteins is digested in the stomach. Fats digested in the part immediately after the stomach that we call duodenum. From there we go to the small intestine, the ileum, the next part. The upper part of the small intestine is where digestion ends. There are juices there which have enzymes that finish digestion. One, we have the intestine itself producing its juice that is called intestinal juice. And then it is helped by the pancreas. Pancreas, apart from producing insulin to prevent diabetes, also produces pancreatic juice that is used for digestion. So all these intestinal juice and pancreatic juice move to the upper part of the small intestine to finish digestion. Carbohydrates digestion started in the mouth, ends in the small intestine. Protein starts in the stomach, ends in the small intestine. Fat starts in the duodenum, ends in the small intestine. So if the question is where does digestion of carbohydrate starts? Mouth. Where does it stop? Small intestine is always our answer. The small intestine, the upper part is where digestion ends. Then what happens in the lower part? The lower part of the small intestine is where absorption of food starts. To absorb food means now to bring it inside your bloodstream. That lower part of the small intestine is rich in blood capillaries. So blood comes there to pick food. When food leaves the small intestine and enters into your blood, we say it has been absorbed by your blood. That absorption occurs in the small intestine. So absorption of food occurs in the small intestine, the lower part of the small intestine. The upper part is where digestion ends, because you have to finish digestion first into small pieces before you absorb something. Then in the large intestine, water. Many people like saying, where is water digested? Water is in a form that is already digested. To digest is to break into small pieces. Can you chew water, for example? You can't. It's already in a form which can be absorbed into our bloodstream. You don't need to break it into smaller pieces. So water is usually absorbed in what we call large intestine. And mineral salts. Remember, salts are things which dissolve in water. When you eat fruits and vegetables, you get a lot of vitamins and minerals. And they usually absorb together with water in the large intestine. And then the food that was not digested, because of various reasons, usually move to the lower part of the large intestine. Remember, large intestine is also called colon. The lower part of it is called rectum, near the anus. That food is stored there for some time. Then when the rectum is full, you feel the urge to remove it in the toilet. And removal of this undigested or indigestible food is known as egestion. The removal is called egestion. Most of it is called egestion, So egestion is the name, not excretion as some people confuse. Most of it is fiber, which you get from fruits and vegetables. So when you go for long call, we are going to do egestion, not excretion. So I think I've explained everything. So in a summary, the mouth is where digestion starts, carbohydrate, with saliva. Food moves in the gullet or esophagus in form of a bolus, round thing, moved down by a wave-like motion called peristalsis to the stomach. In the stomach, proteins are digested by a juice called gastric juice. Stomach also has hydrochloric acid to kill germs in the stomach. Hydrochloric acid to kill germs. From there, the food moves to the part immediately after the stomach that we call duodenum. There, fats are digested by a juice called bile. Bile is produced by the liver, stored in the gallbladder and used in the duodenum to digest the fats. The food continues moving to the top part of the small intestine. That's where digestion ends. The small intestine has intestinal juice and pancreatic juice to finish the digestion process. From there, the undigested food will go to the rectum. When it is removed, that removal is called egestion. Water and mineral salts are not digested in this case, they are absorbed directly at your colon or large intestine. Then the pipe from mouth to anus, we said, is called gut or alimentary canal. The summary in note form is here. Functions of parts of the digestive system. Mouth, teeth, you can read. Those who are taking short notes, 10 seconds. The summary of what we have discussed is on the board. At the mouth, digestion starts. Teeth break down food, what we call mechanical digestion. Then salivary glands produce digestive juice, in this case saliva. Saliva moistens food and makes it to stick together in small round balls called bolus, which contain enzymes. We have tongue, which moves food up and down and forces it at the back of the mouth so that we swallow it. Or esophagus is known as food pipe or gullet. It allows food to move to the stomach in a wave-like manner known as peristalsis. Then stomach produces digestive juice called gastric juice for digestion of proteins, and also hydrochloric acid for killing germs. Then we have small intestine. Food mixes with digestive juice there. For example, the digestive juices are bile from liver, pancreatic juice from pancreas, and intestinal juice from intestine. And digestion ends there in the upper part of the small intestine. Then absorption starts in the lower part of the small intestine. Small intestine was adapted to absorb a lot of food in the following ways. One, it is very long, so food stays there for a long time. Two, it is rich in blood capillaries, so that blood can come and pick food. And the other one, it has villi. Villi are a finger-like projection that increases surface area for absorbing food. Then we have large intestine. We've said absorption of water and minerals occur there. Rectum, in the rectum, is the one which stores indigestible food or waste matter, e.g. feces. And the removal, we've said, is called egestion. Liver produce bile, which is stored in gall bladder. Boys and girls, we're going to look at human body, and the topic we're going to look at is the reproductive system. This is a topic you'll do again into details in Standard 8. For now, we are doing it just the overview of the reproductive system, plus other things we are going to look at as the lesson progresses. Welcome. So reproduction is simply giving rise to a new generation. Reproduction is giving rise to a new generation. And before we get deeper into it, let's look at the objectives of our lessons today. One of the objectives today will be to identify parts of the reproductive system, state functions of some of these parts, and also describe the physical changes during adolescence. I'll start by explaining or defining the term reproduction. Reproduction refers to giving rise to a new generation. Many people usually assume it's giving birth. It's not always that reproduction means giving birth. For example, have you ever seen a hen giving birth? They don't. They lay eggs. So there are very many ways in which animals and plants reproduce. One of them is to give birth that you are used to. Two is to lay eggs. Some animals produce young ones by laying eggs. Others do, you'll come to learn it later, cell division. They divide themselves. Others, like plants, use seeds to reproduce. So if you want to grow more maize, it won't give birth, it won't lay eggs. You use seeds, spores, etc. So reproduction is not merely giving birth to young ones, but having young ones through different methods. In our topic of today, we are going to look at reproduction in human beings. And I'll start by the reproductive system. So we'll start by the male reproductive system. In the male reproductive system, we have a skin here. This skin is referred to as scrotum. The skin is referred to as scrotum, and one of the functions of the scrotum is to regulate the temperature of the testicles. It does that by, sometimes when it is hot, you find it hanging. When it hangs, it moves away from our body temperature, because the testes must have a temperature which is slightly lower than our own body temperature. So you find during hot days, it hangs, the scrotum, moving the testicles far away from our warmth, from our body. And during cold times, you find it shrinks or contracts so that it can get some heat, or it can move closer to our body so that it can get some heat from our own body. So that's how scrotum, we say, regulates or controls temperature of the inner parts, in this case, the testes. Then there are usually some round things here that we call testes. In full, we write it as testicles. Testicles, or when there are many or several, you refer to them as testes. So they are the main reproductive cells. They are the ones which are the main reproductive organs. The whole thing is a male reproductive organ, but the testis is the main one, because in it produces what we call sperms. And sperms are the main male reproductive cells. Our body is made up of small units called cells. And there are different types of cells. They are living. So the main reproductive cell in human beings for the male is referred to as spermatozoa, or you can call it sperms, which usually has a head, it has a tail to make it to swim, and it has something called nucleus, which we are going to learn later in Standard 8. So the testis produces what we call sperms from inside it. And sperms are the male sex cells. So if you're told in your examinations which ones are the male sex cells, you go for sperms. Where are they produced? They are produced by the testes or testicles. From there, the sperms usually, I think it's not in my diagram here, but they usually stored. Above the testicle, there's an organ here. This organ is referred to as epididymis. Epididymis is where now the sperms are stored, waiting for their removal. And their removal, you'll come to learn later, is called ejaculations. So epididymis usually stores sperms. They are produced from the testes and stored in the epididymis. Then they move using a small duct. In science, small pipe is called a duct. Small tube is called a duct inside our body. So when the sperms must be removed or ejaculated, they usually move through what we call sperm duct. So from the testes, we have what we call sperm duct. The sperm duct removes allows movement of sperms, and as the sperm is being removed, there are some things here that we call glands, like the seminal vesicle. At a level, let me just call them glands. Later on, you'll come to learn their names. They're usually about 3 types: the seminal vesicle, Cowper's gland, and prostate gland. You can see they have listed for you prostate gland. But your syllabus says we just call them at this level glands. But for those who are curious to know 1 or 2 more things compared to others, we can get their names. So just take them as glands. And a gland is an organ which produces juices or fluids. We have several glands in our body. One is tear glands. When you are punished for not doing homework, you know what happens, tears flow. The other one is salivary glands under your tongue. In Saradiet, you learn sweat glands when you do parts of the skin. But for now, we are looking at these reproductive glands. They produce a fluid. That fluid mixes with sperms, because sperms are cells, and cells are microscopic. They are very tiny, you won't see them. And when they mix with sperm, they form what we call semen. They form what we call semen. It is semen which is usually visible as a fluid which comes out from the penis during different occasions, when children are being produced, during mating, or also will come, the next topic is about adolescent changes. When boys undergoing adolescent, they experience what we call wet dreams. So they'll always see the semen coming out. So the glands produce a fluid which mixes with sperm to form what we call semen. The 3 glands produce fluid mixing with sperm to form what we call semen. The urinary bladder was just put there to show you, because later on you'll look at excretion in class 8, where we'll look at urinary bladder. It's not part of our system here. Our system, the male reproductive system, is the penis, which you can see here, is the one which is used to drive the sperms into the vagina when reproduction is taking place or mating. Then we have the scrotum, which I've said is a skin that protects the inner organs like sperms, and testes. It also regulates temperature. I've said during hot times, it hangs because the temperature of testes must be lower than temperature of our body. So it hangs, in other words, moving away from our warm body so that it's a bit cooler. Then during cold days, it contracts or shrinks so that it gets closer to our temperature, and it is given some heat here and there to make it not to be very cold. That's how scrotum regulates temperature of our testicles. Then I have penis, which I've said. Then we have urethra. Urethra, from the sperm duct, the sperm flows, mixes with the glands, and then they flow following a tube called urethra. Urethra also removes urine, but not only urine, it also removes what we call sperms. So a summary of what we have talked about. Number 1, function of different parts of the male reproductive system. You can see them on the board. I've said scrotum regulates temperature and protects the testes. Number 2, penis inserts sperms into the vagina. Number 3, sperms is the male sex cells. In exam, they like that. Number 4, sperm duct is a tube connecting testes and urethra. Number 5, we have urethra. It allows movement out of the body of urine and also semen. Then we have epididymis. It's the one which stores the sperms. Gland secretes. To secrete is to produce. There are many glands. In this case, we're dealing with the reproductive glands, the seminal vesicle, Cowper's gland, and prostate gland. You can just collectively call them glands. They produce a fluid which mixes with sperm to form what we call semen. Then I go to the opposite. We have done the male reproductive organ. We move to the female reproductive organ. You can see it clearly on the board. We have first uterus. The uterus here is where people or babies, let's call them embryo. In an exam, when you see the word embryo, this is a young baby who is developing inside the womb. The uterus is also known as womb. Babies don't develop in the womb, it is embryo. When they have been born is when we call them babies or infants. Before that, them as embryo. So it's always a container. There's usually a confusion in class 6 where people, because in Kiswahili tunasema mtoto anazaliwa kwa tumbo, many students now usually think students grow inside the stomach. Stomach is something else, where food is usually stored for around 3 hours before it continues its movement to the intestine. If babies were to develop there, then wangekuwa wanazaliwa, wanatoka maybe na sukuma, omena, samaki, kila kitu. But that's not the case because this is not stomach. So don't translate mother tongue and Kiswahili into science. This is a different thing from the stomach called womb. You can also call it uterus, where pupils, not pupils, where embryo develops. Then we have ovary. The ovary here is the one which produces the female sex cell. And the female sex cell is called ovum when it is one, and they are called ova when they are many. So we don't say ovums. It is ova when they are many. So the ovary produces, if you're told function of the ovary, you say produces female sex cell ovum or ova. Then we have a tube connecting ovary to the womb. It's referred to as fallopian tube. Here, fallopian tube. I'll remove this word. It's not necessary for now. You'll learn it in class 8. So fallopian tube is also referred to as oviduct. It is where fertilization occurs. I told you the sperm usually is put by the penis inside the vagina. Vagina is a tube from down here to up here. It's called vagina. Sperms are left there by the penis. They have a tail, they swim by themselves, moving to the other side of the fallopian tube and also to this side of the fallopian tube. It is at this point when they meet an ovum, which has just been released by the ovary, that fertilization occurs. And fertilization means fusion or union ama kushikana. The egg, the ovum, inashikana na sperms. And zikishikana, tunasema zimefuse, and that fusion is what we call fertilization. So a child will be born. And that's why babies have some characteristics of father and some of mother, because those two things combined. You learn into details that one in class 8. For now, mainly is about labeling the parts and the general functions of those parts you have labeled. So fallopian tube is where fertilization occurs. To remember double F, fallopian tubes goes with fertilization. Then I have the top part of the vagina that is called cervix. Then we have the vagina itself. Then the lower hole that is always confused to be vagina is called vulva. So vagina is a tube from down the vulva up to the top part called cervix. So this is a female reproductive organ. The summary of what we have just said is here on the board. For those who are writing short notes, we have said 1, ovary produces female sex cells. Number 2, ovum. If it is 1, it's ovum. When there's many ova, they're the female sex cell if it is ovum, or sex cells if it is ova. Then uterus is where growth of the embryo. Embryo na fetus is a young child who is developing in the womb. When they are born is when we call them babies. But when they're inside there, we refer to them as embryo or fetus. So it's not a tough word. When you meet it in examination, do not float. It means the developing baby. Then I have the vagina. The vagina, some books will refer to it as birth canal when it comes to reproduction, because that's where the baby comes out from. I know you used to ask this tough question to your, you used to look for answers from your parents, asking tough questions where babies come from. And the answers, because many parents are shy to tell you, is always that they are bought. To be honest, in science, babies are not bought. They are born. And they pass through the vagina. The vagina is called birth canal because during birth, a child passes through that tube. Then I have cervix, is the top part of the vagina, which I've said is a tube. Then fallopian tube, also known as oviduct, is the one where fertilization occurs. It allows fertilization. Then we have the other thing, the last part of it, physical changes during an adolescence. Physical changes during adolescence. Adolescence is a stage between childhood and adulthood. Uko hapo katikati. You are not an adult and you are no longer a child. And that stage is called adolescent, or some books calling it puberty. There are so many things which happen. In fact, the person who is undergoing that stage, especially class 6, that's from class 6, because this is why this topic was brought from class 6. Boys start later, girls start earlier, adolescent. At around 10, 11, girls have started. Boys, 11, 12 there. Or girls sometimes start from 9 to 10 years, boys 1 year later, 10 to 11 years. That's why girls usually mature before boys, even marriage. You see, most of the time, the ladies are younger than the men. And that's why hata kujua mengi, you'll find always girls become wajuaji faster than boys. Look at even in the house, girls start watching these movies, kina soap operas. This is a love. But boys, Tom and Jerry and the like, and football and some other funny stuff, cow and hen. So later on is when boys mature and they reach that stage of adolescence. So an adolescent is a person who is in adolescence stage. Adolescence is the stage. Adolescent is a person. Puberty is the beginning of adolescent. Puberty. People tend to confuse adolescent with teenagers. Teenagers need 13, 14 to 19. Adolescent starts early. So it's not synonymous with teenager. The changes in females are as follows. They're observable. Physical changes are those you can see. Emotional changes have to do with feelings. So physical changes in female, 1, the breasts become big, they enlarge. 2, the hips broaden. Even those who are straight like this start developing some curves in the hips. So when I say hips broadens, don't say boys, that is for girls. Then menstruation start. Usually, when girls reach adolescent, there is flow of blood which comes once after every 28 days. Because the egg starts producing, the ovary starts producing eggs. So the egg usually comes out from the ovary during adolescence. And if it doesn't get sperm to be fertilized, it usually flows down together with some fluid in form of what we call menstruation or monthly period. So during adolescent, girls start menstruation. So in your examination, boys, they don't undergo menstruation. Don't pick that choice. Then we have pimples up here. These pimples can also be referred to as acne. So the pimples start appearing. So when you reach adolescence, ujikute uko very rough na pimples, don't get worried. It's a stage. It's normal. It's not a disease. If it's a disease, checkup is required. But most of the time is because you are undergoing that stage. It usually gives parents worry. They visit all dermatologists, people who take care of our skin in the country. Anajaribu hii wezi huyu. It's natural. You just let it go after some time. Then the increase in height and weight. And that's why if you look at pupils in class 6, most of them are either the same height with their parents or even slightly taller. Whenever there's a meeting, parents meeting, you'll always find people walking together who look like twins. Sometimes one is a mother, one is a daughter or son. So there is a rapid increase in weight and height. And also sweat glands become very strong. And that's why we are told why do they need to observe high standards of cleanliness or hygiene is because you say their sweat glands are stronger than for others. And that's why jasho ya mtu ambaye ni adolescent huwa inanuka sana compared to the other sweats. So if you fear water and you are 10 of you in a classroom, you know how that class will feel like for the, you know what you are doing to the teacher and to your friends. I'm talking to those who fear water. So you have to keep showering because of powerful sweat glands. Also the increase in weight because I think overeating. Adolescent wanakula sana. This is a stage you'll even find boys given pocket money, anakimbia kununua mkate nusu. Akiwa mdogo alikuwa ananunua sweetie, chocolate, but akifika adolescent sasa ni mikate kwa wingi. And they take it dry. So it's because of that appetite that makes them to add weight. And also there is rapid growth in height. Then I have changes in males or boys. The shoulders broaden. That sometimes doesn't make sense. I saw some where somebody was buying a coat, the coat for the suit. If you look at a lady's coat, they're usually a bit like that. But for men, the shoulder here is a bit broad. Usijipate umepanga line unanunua hii ambayo iko straight hivi na hivi and you are a man. Hii ni ya ladies. For men is a bit wide on top there because their shoulders broaden. Their voice breaks. They start speaking in bass, that's the meaning. Then the increase in height and weight. And pimples may also appear. That is in boys. So those are the physical changes, the ones you can observe. Then we have what we call emotional changes. They are not common in our examination or in our syllabus, but sometimes in a while it's good to know, so that to know if we have physical, we have emotional. They also used to be very common some time back. So emotional changes have to do with behaviors. Like at that stage, the adolescent will get attracted to members of opposite sex. That's the time when you do some quick inspection in your lockers, teachers will always find letters written. So and so, dear John, dear Mary. They're usually hidden inside those lockers. And that's why in many schools, they like doing sudden inspection and they confiscate some things, letters and so forth. So emotional changes have to do with behaviors, where number one, boys and girls get attracted to members of opposite sex. Number two, they become conscious of their looks. You'll find so many mirrors inside lockers at this stage. Class 6, 7, 8, there are so many mirrors in lockers where people keep looking at themselves. So people also look for independence. They want to be like they say they are big, I'm big enough, I know what I'm doing. Earlier on, they used to like working with parents and refusing to let go their parents. But during adolescence, they want to be alone. They want to move with their peers. Those are emotional changes. They also become very moody, very moody. Saa zingine they are happy, saa zingine they are sad. Those are also emotional changes. With that, we've come to the end of this lesson.